Hi, PJ Hoover here. Why am I wearing this necklace? Because this necklace reminds me of the sun, and the sun reminds me of Solstice, which is the title of my debut young adult novel. We're actually here today for the very first installment of our Solstice Online Book Club, a way to bring readers closer to the author. Solstice is my debut young adult novel, and it's set in Austin. It's kind of a mashup between dystopian and mythology, and if you don't know what it's about or you haven't read it, go to my website, pjhoover.com, and you can read all about the book and see what people have to say. Otherwise, we're going to get right into the questions. Okay, so the question is, what are some of the real places in Austin or in the world that are actually used in Solstice? And there are actually lots of them, and this is a really fun thing for an author to do, to be able to use his or her favorite places and put them in books. So first off, Solstice is set in Austin, Texas, and there is a street down near the University of Texas called the Drag. Well, that's its nickname. And so the Drag is currently here in Austin, and it is somewhere that Piper and her best friend Chloe go early on in the book to get tattoos. And it's like this crazy world of tattoos, and they run into freaky people, and it's kind of like the Drag today. So anyway, that is one place that I used. Another place that I used in Solstice that is actually a real place, Pokey Joe's Barbecue. So if you like barbecue, Pokey Joe's is a fantastic place to go. Not only because they have really good barbecue, but because they have some of the most delicious sides in the world. Things like that green bean casserole and macaroni and cheese. I can taste them already. Another place that is based on real world things, and this is actually not in Austin, it's in Washington, D.C., which is right near where I grew up, is the Botanical Gardens of Washington, D.C. So if you've never been to these botanical gardens, they're just amazing and beautiful. And I based the greenhouse that Piper lives in. Piper lives in this giant greenhouse, the Botanical Haven, and I based that actually on the Botanical Gardens in Washington, D.C. Another place that is actually a real world place is the Driscoll Hotel. I don't call it out by name, but it's a hotel here in Austin, and this is where Piper goes on a date with one of the guys in the book. Okay, so the next question is, why is the world at war? Well, I would look at history and say, why isn't the world at war? Because the world is always at war, it seems. But in Solstice, it is at war, and this is a big part of the story, and it is because there's this huge global warming crisis going on, and so people are fighting about shortages of food and water and shelter and just like everything, and violence is higher, and so that is why war is such a big part of the world of Solstice. Okay, next question. How do the domes operate? So in Solstice, if you look at the cover, you see it is the city of Austin here, and over the city of Austin, there are 8 glass domes. And so how these actually operate is this. There is kind of a giant steel structure that forms the skeleton of the domes, and it's up all the time. And then when the domes are needed, what happens is they pour materials into this steel structure, and the glass actually grows from one steel beam to the next, forming a giant dome that way. And when the dome is no longer needed, the glass is reabsorbed and the materials can be reused. And what happens is the glass actually refracts the heat. So it's not like it's a giant greenhouse effect going on inside these domes. It's more of a barrier to block away that heat and be able to control the climate inside. Next question. What exactly are heat bubbles? So in chapter 1 of Solstice, a giant heat bubble descends on the city of Austin, and they go into all this alert, and it's a very, very crazy time. The temperature reaches into the red zone because everything is measured out in zones as far as temperature goes. And so a heat bubble, in my mind, is not like a big chewing gum bubble that swallows up the city or anything like that. It's more of a huge mass of heat that is kind of building up in the air and kind of sinks down onto the populated city, drawn there maybe by all the architecture or for whatever reason, but it creates a horrible, disastrous situation, and people need to do something to survive. Next question, what does a phone do? And if you've read Solstice, you know when I say phone, it is F-O-N, phone. It stands for Functional Operating Node. So I have a smartphone. I love my smartphone. I carry it with me all the time. It does all sorts of wonderful things. I can get on Twitter and Facebook and Instagram, and I can send emails and texts and make phone calls, and it's awesome. So I think as technology continues to improve and smartphones continue to develop, what's going to happen is the FON, Functional Operating Node phone, is just kind of the next generation of our smartphones. Because these things are just going to keep getting smarter and smarter and doing more and more things until they become way more than even a phone, and we won't even be able to call them a normal P-H-O-N-E phone anymore. It'll be that F-O-N before we know it. Oh yeah, and you technology companies, I want you to remember who came up with that term, F-O-N, Functional Operating Node. Okay, next question is, how does transportation to the underworld really work exactly? So if you've read Solstice, which I'm hoping you have, so this is a little bit of a spoiler, but the main character, Piper, she travels to the underworld. And when she's traveling, she basically sinks into the ground and she goes through kind of this silvery void of like liquid mercury type stuff that she has to breathe in, and it's all around her and she doesn't know if she's going to die or not, but she breathes it in and everything is okay, and then she's in the underworld. Here's a fact about the underworld. There are 5 rivers in the underworld. The first river, the river Styx, it grants passage to the underworld in Solstice. And so this silvery void, the silvery liquid mercury, is actually the river Styx, and it is transporting her from above ground to the underworld. So in Solstice, Piper actually gets 2 presents which are very special. One is actually illegal, and the first one is cut flowers. So cut flowers are delivered to Piper, and these are illegal because cutting flowers is not cool for the environment. Dead flowers, because cutting flowers is not legal because cut flowers are dead flowers and they aren't helping the environment grow. The next present Piper gets is chocolates delivered to her. And why chocolates are so special is because, you know, with global warming going on, it's not easy to ship chocolate around the country and the world. That stuff's going to melt. And to actually get it there costs a lot of money in shipping. So the question is, did I ever get anything like this given to me when I was a teenager? And the answer is yes. Yay! I remember I got flowers delivered to me in 9th grade. Someone actually put them in my locker, and it was kind of really special and really awesome. I'm not really sure I thanked him for that, so if you're watching the video, thank you for the flowers. It was really, really sweet. I'll probably have my son do the same thing someday. The best chocolates in the world, well, it's actually 2. The first are Lamb's chocolate-covered strawberries from here in Austin. They are so delicious. I want them every holiday possible. My second favorite chocolates, which are a lot more like the ones that Piper gets, are the Esther Price chocolate, which is up in Dayton, Ohio, and the reason it's more like Piper's is because I can't get that stuff shipped to Austin in the summer all the way from Ohio because it will melt and I'll have to pay lots and lots of money to have it packed in ice. Okay, and just one fun little side note, this chocolate bar that I'm holding up, it is pomegranate raspberry flavored, and why do you think I bought a pomegranate flavored chocolate bar? Okay, so that does it for our first video for the Online Solstice Book Club. Thank you so much for watching, thank you so much for reading, and thank you again to the Biddeford Book Ninjas for helping me come up with the questions that made it possible. So if you guys have been watching the videos, which thank you for watching, you might be wondering what this thing is right here. This is an old typewriter. It's a manual typewriter, and it is the kind that I actually learned to type on. My mom found it at a thrift store, had it sent to Texas, and it's really cool. It's kind of like a relic from back in the day, and I like having it in my house.